Hi guys, welcome to the UNO podcast. And today we will talk about the kinds of learners who are special. But first of all, I would like to introduce my co-hosts for our podcast, starting Mark Jamil Castor, Carlo Duran, Benedict Mangramo, and Severino Clarence Vicente. And last but not the least, your host, Gabriel Zyrosines. So guys, let's have a little bit of chit chat. How are you? How is your quarantine life?
Uy, kamusta nga ba ako nitong quarantine? Ito, ayos lang, nakakaraos naman. Medyo stress lang kasi tambak. Tsaka laging nasa tapat ng computer para gumawa ng requirements sa school. Tapos onting problema sa mental health. Pero ayun, ayos na naman. Palag-palag pa. Yun lang.
So this pandemic is pretty inspiring, of course, because I learned something that I can't learn. I can't learn during face to face. I learned something on myself. I learned to appreciate things that I have, or all the things that I have. That pretty much it's not that worth for you, but it is more worth for me. And having time with my dad is very time worth for me. So that is all on my pandemic period.
So my quarantine life is, at first it was hard and I wasn't able to adapt to it because it is first for me and it is also first time for everyone. So by the time goes by, I was able to adapt to the new system in our community, and I was be able to be comfortable to it. And yeah, sometimes quarantine life's hard, and sometimes it can be just just chilling in the house, doing some schoolworks. And yes, in general, my quarantine life is good. So guys, actually, this is our very first podcast and we're kinda nervous about this. The purpose of this podcast is to inform everyone about the students with special needs. That includes the students with mental retardation, students with learning disabilities, and students who are gifted and talented.
Let's start with mental retardation. Carlo will tell us about how can we describe or classify this intellectual disability or the mental retardation. Take it away, Carlo.
They are being categorized to below average intelligence or mental ability. They have deficiency of aptitude and proficiency, which is essential to our daily living. Although they are slow thinkers, they can still learn and do fresh skills, little by little. Someone with intellectual disability has their limitation in two areas, and these areas are the intellectual functioning or the IQ, or intelligence quotient, which is responsible in learning, reasoning, decision making, and problem solving, while the other one is adaptive behavior, skills that is vital to our day-to-day living. And to measure this adaptive behavior, professionals use observation. Professionals tend to observe on how well they feed themselves, wear their clothes, or interact with their parents and friends. The signs of intellectual disability in the children are the walking, crawling, or talking at a later age, also having difficulties in remembering and problem solving, and sometimes they have explosive tantrums. There are different types of causes of these intellectual disabilities. One is the genetics. It is from the parents to the child. One example of this is the Down syndrome. Be specific, the translocational Down syndrome, because there are Down syndromes that are not genetically acquired but rather having the problems during pregnancy, which is another cause of intellectual disability. Another are the illness and injuries. such as severe brain damage, near drowning, and exposure to toxic waste such as lead, and some of the causes are still unknown.
Wow! Thank you, Carlo. And Jamil will tell us about, as a future educator, how can we deal with this type of students? What are the approaches we can use in teaching them?
Salamat Clarence, ako nga pala si Mark Jamil Castoro. So, let's proceed on educational programs available in the Philippines for students with learning disabilities. There are ways on educational programs that created by the Department of Education to enhance the chance of special students to learn. But before they get this kind of treatment in schools, they need to reach out to the principal or the guidance counselor of education institution where they can demand to enroll the children. So let's start. First is the self-contained class. A separate class for only one type of exceptionally that serves moderate or severe type of disabilities. Halimbawa nito is yung autism, deaf blindness, at saka yung sinasabi kanina ni Carlo na severe mental retardation. Kaya hinihiwalay sila is para makakapag-focus ang mga SPED teachers sa pagturo sa kanila at masabayan yung pace or yung pagkabilis nilang matuto kaya sila hinihiwalay ng class. Next is itinerant teaching. A traveling teacher reach out to the children with special needs in other schools or at home to provide direct or consultative service. Ito naman ay tinatawag din nating traveling teacher or peripatetic teacher. They are sometimes specialized to work on trades, healthcare, or in the field of special education. Sometimes providing individual tutoring. This kind of education programs made teacher without formal schools. They just travel to teach special children. Next is resource room. A designated place where the child with special needs enrolled in a regular school program goes in order to make use of the special equipment, either in a tutorial situation or in a small group session handled by a SPED teacher. This program is a separate setting, either a classroom, a smaller designated room, where special education program can be delivered to a student with disability, individuality, or in a small group. Resource rooms are used in a variety of ways, ranging from instruction, homework assistance, meetings, or representing students' alternative social space. According to IDEA, or Individual with Disabilities Educational Act, children with disabilities are educated in least restrictive environment. Means na hanggang maaari ay turuan ang mga bata na may special needs kasama ang mga normal na bata. Ang sunod naman ay ang pull out. This kind of program where the child enrolled in a regular class reports to the resource room for a period for special instruction by a SPED teacher. Dito naman ay hayaan ng mga SPED students to attend a normal class. But after the class, the student must report to the resource room and will be given instructions by the SPED teacher. Sunod is integration or mainstreaming. Refers to the enrollment of a child with special needs in a regular class with support services. There are two degrees of integration. The first is partial integration, and the second one is full integration. In a partial integration or mainstreaming, a child with special needs enrolled in a special class is integrated with regular children in non-academic activities like work education, physical education, arts, school programs, and among others, then gradually integrated in academic subject if qualified. Meanwhile, in full integration or full mainstreaming, a child with special needs sits in a regular class in all academic and non-academic subjects. And lastly, inclusion or inclusive education. This refers to the education where whatever the children's disability, severity of disability, and need for related services, receive their total education within the regular education classroom. And that was the 6 educational programs available in the Philippines for students with learning disabilities. In school year 2015-2016, DepEd offered aptitude trainings to 345 teachers and 45 administrators and supervisors cooperated in delivering quality education to learners with certain exceptionalities. Amongst the factors of depth in improving capabilities of teachers, handling learners with exceptionalities and endorsing the SPED advocacy are the resources for blind incorporation, Autism Society of the Philippines, Leonard Scherzer for Disabled Foundation, and Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder Society. Furthermore, the other companion organization for DepEd for the SPED program are the Learning Disabilities Association, Philippine Association for Intellectually Disabled, National Association for the Gifted, Philippine Federation for the Rehabilitation of Disabled, Parents Advocate for the Visually Impaired Children, and National Council of Disability Affairs. Yun yung anim na sinabi ko kanina ng mga programs is gawa ng DepEd, and in school year 2015-2016, 345 teachers, 45 administrators, supervisor is naturuan about sa mga programs na to. Yun lang, Clarence. Salamat.
Thank you, Jamil, for the information you have shared to us. Now, let's discuss those students with learning disability. Benedict will share to us how will you define the learning disabilities and how will you categorize its presence.
Good day, everyone. Now we were going to talk about learning disabilities. What is learning disability? A learning disability is a neurological disorder. In modest terms, a learning disability results from difference in errors later in life. Did you know that Albert Einstein could not read until he was 9? What a shocking, right? A person with the smartest person in the world has trouble in reading until he was 9. Walt Disney, George Patton, and Vice President Nelson Rockefeller had trouble reading all their lives. And some of the celebrities here in the Philippines have their sons graduated in high school and have achieving honors with learning disability, of course. Did you understand what I'm telling here? I'm saying that if you ever have the learning disability, it is not a hindrance for you to success in life. Now we were going to discuss the different kinds of learning disability and common learning disability. First is dyscalculia. Dyscalculia is a specific learning disability that affects the person's ability to understand numbers and learn facts. And people with dyscalculia have difficulty of encompasses a wide range of learning disability related to math. And students with dyscalculia may have difficulty learning to count or have a poor memory for numbers, have trouble writing numbers, finding correct place values and lining up equations, have trouble remembering math facts, and be unable to follow sequence of steps, have difficulty of understanding numbers, math symbols, and word problems, find it hard to visualize patterns, have difficulty of measuring things, have an exceptionally slow and difficult time solving math problems, avoid games that require strategies involving maths, and of course, especially in becoming extremely frustrated or anxious with schoolwork related to mathematics, because they know that they can't do that, or they have a low function in mathematics. What teachers can do? If you suspect a teacher has dyscalculia or a student has a dyscalculia, I recommend that seeking an education evaluation to a parent or guardian or an administrator or school counselor. Teachers can help students struggling with dyscalculia to become aware of their strengths and weaknesses, helping students understanding their learning styles and using alternative approach can enable them to achieve confidence and success in math. Next is dysgraphia. A dysgraphia is a specific learning disability that affects a person's handwriting ability and fine motor skills. How does dysgraphia affect the students? Effective writing depends upon the complex process of manipulation or manipulating speech sounds, pairing them with written images, and then producing those learned images from memory. To better understand the processing differences that students with dysgraphia struggle with, consider the analogy. You enter a destination into a Google map, but instead of being directed onto the wide open highway, you find yourself on widely back roads, and back trip takes 3 times the longer than it should, right? You still get to the destination, but you have to focus harder because of the roads taken. Now, how do you know if a student has a dysgraphia? Keep an eye out for these red flags and make sure to memorize it. If you know that if you are suspecting a student with dysgraphia: poor phonological awareness, poor pencil grip, persistent inconsistent letter information, illegible writing, slow writing fluency, difficulty copying visual information accurately, inaccurate spelling. And to be honest, I may have a dysgraphia because when I copy the written in board, I have difficulty copying in visual information accurately because sometimes a word seemingly alike in when speaking it, but different in definition. That's why I can hardly enough copy without an erasure, because sometimes I write a different word when it is not. So that is all in dysgraphia. Next is dyslexia, a specific learning disability that affects reading and related language-based processing skills. Well, signs of dyslexia can be difficult to recognize before your child enters childhood or enters a school, but some early clues may indicate a problem once your child reaches into school age. And when your child is at school, your child's teachers may be the first to notice a problem. Yes, severity varies, but the conditions often becomes apparent as child starts learning to read. Signs that a young may be at risk of dyslexia include late talking, learning new words slowly, problems forming words correctly, such as reversing sounds in words or confusing words that sound alike, problems with remembering or naming letters, numbers, and colors, difficulty of learning nursery rhymes or playing rhyming games. So, when to see a doctor of a student with dyslexia or a child with dyslexia? Though most children are ready to learn this reading by kindergarten or first grade, children with dyslexia often can't grasp the basics of reading by that time. Talking with your doctor if your child's reading level is below what expected for his or her age, or if you notice other signs of dyslexia. And we may understand that in IQ test. Furthermore, nonverbal learning disability has trouble interpreting nonverbal cues like facial expressions or body language and may have poor coordination. So, the chief of characteristic of nonverbal learning disability include tactile perceptual deficit, usually on the left side of the body. Coordination difficulties, again, often more marked on the left side of the body. Problems with visual spatial organization, and extreme difficulty of adaptation to new and complex situation. Trouble understanding nonverbal feedback in social situation, problem with social perception, social judgment, and social interaction, distorted sense of time, very strong rote verbal disability. And most of this nonverbal learning disability is you cannot joke around with this person because most of this child can't stand with an irony sentence. So they see each what you said is in reality, or they always take it in a serious way. When people with nonverbal learning disability are assessed, typically their performance in IQ is significantly lower than their verbal IQ because of visual spatial weakness. Next is oral or written language disorder and specific reading comprehension deficit. Learning disability that affects an individual understanding of what they read of spoken language. The ability to express oneself with oral language may be also be impacted. And it is also included in language processing disorder, nonverbal learning disability, and visual perceptual or visual motor deficit. Well, that is all, and the related disorder is ADHD, where a disorder that includes difficulty staying focused and paying attention, controlling behaviors, and hyperactivity. Dyspraxia, a disorder which causes problems with movement and coordination, language and speech. And next is executive functioning, as affects planning, organizing, strategizing, attention to details, and managing time and space. And mostly, of course, we know that an IQ measurement has traditionally been defined severity. A person with an IQ of less than 20 would be described as a profound learning disability. A person with an IQ of 20 to 34 points, a severe learning disability. And the person with an IQ of 50 to 70, mild learning disability. And a score of 116, we know that or more is considered is above average. A score of 130 or higher signals a high IQ. Then, in an IQ scale, is 121 to 130 is a gifted. Next is 111 to 120 is above average intelligence. 90 to 110 average intelligence. And 80 to 89 have below average intelligence. It is counted as having a learning disability or a disorder in mental. That is all.
Thank you, Ben. Now, Gab, can you give us some examples of the programs that helps the learners with this type of condition?
Hi there, my name is Gabriel Hines, and as you all heard earlier, my co-host Benedict explained what is learning disabilities. And now I'm going to explain you all the causes of learning disabilities. Learning disabilities is caused by any one of a variety of factors that I'm going to indicate. First possible cause is a inherited condition that a certain genes passed from the parents that affects the brain, like for example, Fragile X. The Fragile X syndrome is a genetic condition that causes a range of developmental problems including learning disabilities and cognitive impairment. Usually, males are more severely affected by this disorder than females. Second is premature birth. Infants that are preterm are most likely to have lower intelligence and academic scores, feel difficulties at school, and they need educational assistance. Psychological and physical trauma. Getting abused in early childhood may cease or slow the brain development, and having severe illness or injury in early childhood may affect brain development, and it can also raise the risk of getting learning disorders. And next is lack of mental stimulation in early life. The infant may experience lack of education in its environment or surroundings. Like for example, the parents isn't giving much attention to their child for teaching them in academical purpose, occupation and social leisure activities. Next is dyslexia. It's a learning disorder that involves difficulty reading due to the problems identifying speech sounds and learning how they relate to letters and words. Next is dysgraphia. This is a disorder that are ones with difficulties in spelling or having a trouble putting thoughts on paper. They appear also when children are at the first stage of learning to write. Next, last is dyscalculia. It's a disorder that is having difficulties in maths, including understanding the meaning of numbers and also applying mathematical principles in problem solving. And now that's all for the causes of learning disabilities. And now I will proceed to the purpose of special education program for students with learning disabilities. Special education focuses on helping kids with learning disabilities. There are different instructional programs that SPED teachers, also known as special education teachers, will implement to help students with learning disabilities. Okay, first is special class. A separate class focuses only on students with severe types of disabilities. Next is resource room. Resource room is both for students who qualify for special education services or for general education students who need some special instruction in an individualized or small group setting for a portion of the day. They come there to access the education materials in a manner that they better suits their learning styles and capabilities. Sometimes, the regular classroom can be noisy and full of distractions, and the students come to the resource room to be better able to focus. Next is pull out. These are the students who need a bit more help from a speech language therapist. They can be called out to the resource room for work in a one-on-one or a group setting. These are also the students who struggle in reading, writing, or speech are often placed within these types of programs. Next is inclusive or inclusion classrooms. These classrooms have a mix of children of varying abilities and co-teachers within the room that allows those who have special needs to get the additional help they require, while remaining in a traditional classroom. Inclusive classroom, each student have the opportunity to receive individualized care that meets their specific needs. It can increase their ability to socialize in a safe and comfortable environment. That's all for special education program for students with learning disabilities and also the cause of learning disabilities. I hope that you all have gained requisite information. And this is your host Gabriel. Thank you for listening.
What a great answer! Thank you for the information you have shared to us, Ben and Gab. Next, we will move on to learners with gifted and talents. I'll discuss the multiple intelligence of a person and the characteristics of gifted and talented children. Okay, my topic is all about gifted and talented learners. So, who are these gifted and talented learners? Gifted person are the people with outstanding talents. They are the people who exceeds the spectrum of IQ, or their IQ is level of a genius or beyond the average person. So, by tradition, they say the term gifted referred only to the learners with uncommonly elevated skills, and their skill were shown specially well in standardized tests of a general aptitude or in school accomplishment. But now, recently, the term gifted is to incorporate extraordinary talent on art, music, and creative writing. And that's the meaning of gifted and talented learners. Let's proceed to multiple intelligence. The idea of multiple intelligence points to innovative customs of thinking about learners who have special gifts and talents. In addition, multiple intelligence theory helps teachers to identify the different learning style of learners. The multiple intelligence theory is created by Howard Gardner a psychologist and professor at Harvard University. Okay, multiple intelligence possesses 9 intelligence. Let's start with visual and spatial. Visual spatial. Children who learn best visually and organizing things spatially. They like to see what you are talking about to understand. They enjoy charts, graphs, maps, tables, illustrations, art, puzzles, costumes, anything eye-catching. Next is verbal linguistic. Verbal or linguistic. Children who demonstrate strength in language arts, speaking, writing, reading, listening. Next one is mathematical or logical. So, these learners who display an aptitude for numbers, reasoning, and problem solving. Next one, Bodily / Kinesthetic. So this is the learners who experience learning best in games, certain activity like dancing, like sports, and hand-on tasks, and building with that kind of kinesthetic that exerts large amount of energy. Other form of intelligence is musical or rhythmic. This is the learners, well, through songs, patterns, rhythms, instruments, and musical expression, they learn more. Next intelligence is Intra Personal. The word intra is inside, and personal is you, the person. So, these learners, who are especially in touch with their own feelings, values, and ideas, they may tend to be reserved or introverted, but they are quite intuitive about what they learn and how it relates to themselves. Next is the reverse of intrapersonal, which is interpersonal. Interpersonal, inter is outside, and personal is you, the person. So, interpersonal, the learners who are noticeably people-oriented and outgoing and do their learning cooperatively in groups or with a partner. These children may have typically be identified as talkative or extroverted or too concerned about being social in setting. Next one is naturalists. This is the learners who love the outdoors, animals, and field trips. Common sample of outdoors is the nature, forests. In field trips, the fish ponds, eco park in the Philippines. The less intelligence is existentialists. These learners who learn in the context of where humankind stands, the big picture of existence. They ask, why are we here? Who am I? What am I? What is our role in this world? Take note of this. Multiple intelligence theory is not exclusively for one student. What I mean is, learners can possess one or more intelligence. No gifted individual is identical. Each has his individual unique patterns and traits. There are plenty of traits that gifted individuals have in common, but no gifted learner exhibits traits in every area. These traits may help a teacher better understand whether the learner is gifted. Under cognitive trait is keen power of abstraction, interest in problem solving and applying concepts, voracious and early reader, large vocabulary, intellectual curiosity, power of critical thinking, skepticism, self-criticism, persistent, goal-directed behavior, independence in work and study, and last, diversity of interests and abilities. Under creative traits is creativeness and inventiveness, keen sense of humor, ability for fantasy, openness to stimuli, wide interest, intuitiveness, flexibility, independence in attitude and social behavior, self-acceptance, and unconcern for social norm, radicalism, and last, aesthetic and moral commitment to self-selected work. Next is affective. Under affective trait is unusual emotional depth and intensity, sensitivity or empathy to the feelings of others, high expectations of self and others, often leading to feelings of frustration, heightened self-awareness, accompanied by feelings of being different, easily wounded, needed for emotional support, need for consistency between abstract values and personal actions, advanced levels of moral judgment, idealism and sense of justice. Last trait is behavioral. Under behavioral trait is spontaneity, boundless enthusiasm, intensely focus on passions, resist changing activities when engrossed in own interests, highly energetic, needs little sleep or downtime, constantly questions.
And that's it with UNO Podcast. Keep safe and have a great day.